This is where I'm having all my issues. So I don't know the title of this video yet, but hopefully it's a good one. Where I left off with you was still my transmission issue of me not being able to get into gear. If you haven't watched the last video, definitely go watch it. The car got back on the ground for the first time in 6 months, and now it's just sorting out the little issues, and let's hope this is a little issue, something as stupid as a shifter linkage, and I'll explain why. So basically the issue I'm having is the transmission keeps popping me out of gear. If you're new here, just a little rundown. I put a GetTrag 420G from an E36 M3 into my car. It is pretty much a direct bolt-on aside from a few things. Some of those include a new selector rod, gotta run the E46 clutch, new transmission mounts, cross member. Aside from that, it just adds a 6th gear to the previous 5-speed that was in the car. So yes, it keeps popping me out of gear, and I was trying to figure out why. I ended off last video saying I was going to change the slave cylinder, which I did. I put an E36 one back in it to no avail. I didn't even get it out of the barn. It just kept popping me out of reversed and first. And it's leading me to believe that it is a shifter linkage issue. And the only thing that the shifter linkage has in common with popping out of every single gear is just that. It's every single gear. It's not like it's third. It's not like it's first. When I was driving the car, it was every single gear. So let's hope it's that commonality. Otherwise, it would be all the detents, and that would be a big headache. So what I'm going to do now is disconnect the shifter linkage and manually put the transmission into gear, set it back on the ground, and see if it pops out. And if it doesn't, then it is a linkage issue. Okay, so the car is in first. I should be able to just get in, start it with the clutch in, and be able to drive in first and not give me any issues. Popped right out of gear. That's not what we wanted. As you can see, I got the RT660s mounted on the TE37s. So I have new tires. I'm going to finally adjust my ride height to where I want it to be. and last but not least, fix my transmission issue so I can actually drive there. Car is the base alignment on it right now, just so I could drive it, but definitely will need another alignment after I do all this stuff. So I have some more ideas about what could be wrong with the transmission, so let's talk about that. So you saw me manually put it into gear from under the car and totally eliminate my linkage so I could rule out a linkage issue, and I put the car back on the ground and it popped out of gear. So that is where I last left off with you, and that's kind of where I left off with the car. I've done a lot more digging since, found out a few things. I could have a compression spring issue, and it's a little complicated, so I'm going to put a diagram right here. So looking at this diagram, this is of an SMG transmission and the associating hardware. Normally these two holes here would have your detents, but the SMG trans does not have that. That's why you swap the bell housing or machine it. So my bell housing was machined, that's all taken care of. So we're looking back here. Number 6 and number 9 could definitely be a culprit here. So I'm really not sure what these do. After reading a comprehensive write-up on M Forum, I stumbled across this passage. What he's doing here is he's taking out his press fit plug, which is number 5, 6, and 7, and you can see in there that his spring is cracked. It must have only been a matter of time before the transmission was no longer capable of shifting or staying in gear, and that is the problem I'm having. So I put a long write-up on M Forum. I've had a few people reach out to me. I've reached out to a few more people. Everyone kind of has their different answer, and this is honestly the most rock hard evidence I've found that's not a clutch issue or a linkage issue, and I've eliminated both those issues. Here's a picture of my transmission before it went into the car, and I don't believe that press fit was even touched, and there's no reason for it to be. Ben doing the conversion, it's not really necessary to do the conversion, but the guy that made the write-up did it anyway because it's good precautionary measures when you have the transmission out of the car. So yeah, I'm gonna take that press fit bushing off, and in there is that spring and locking pin, and I'm gonna check both of those out. Usually both can fail. Usually the spring cracks before anything, so it'll be broken into pieces or whatnot, and then I can have a look at 8, 9, and 10. Yes, that spring can also crack too, but I think my main concern is that 5, 6, 7, the press fit bushing. So okay, so we are back on the ground, and it's about a few days later. Of course, I didn't have my camera with me yesterday, but the issue is resolved. Let me tell you how. So it wasn't a linkage issue, it wasn't a clutch issue. A good friend of mine, Danny, told me that a transmission can be a little overfilled sometimes, and that'll create too much pressure in the transmission. And I thought back to when I filled the transmission with fluid, and when I had the car over here on jack stands, I had it pretty high up, but I don't know if it was exactly level. I think the front end may have been a little too high. So in the transmission, I took the fill plug out probably over the course of like 10 minutes, maybe like 2 teaspoons of fluid came out. And then I plugged it back in. I didn't put the car on the ground at that point, but at that point I checked my compression springs. I talked about this previously on those write-ups, and they both looked great. Here's a photo of them. As you can see, the top and bottom one and their associating hardware looked fine. No springs were broken. I didn't replace these springs. There's really no need. It's not like a major wear item, and if they go wrong, they're super easy to access, even with the transmission into the car. I know what symptoms it'll give me if they do crack, God forbid, but I put them back in just for test purposes, and I put the car back on the ground after draining that little overflow and taking those compression springs out, put it back on the ground, and I tested it for shits and giggles, and it didn't pop out of reverse first try, didn't pop out of first try, did that about 3 more times, didn't pop out at all. I was like, okay. I brought it outside of the barn, let it warm up, took it down the road for like a mile or 2, hit every single gear, the shifter felt great, and my issues resolved. So I don't know whether it was me taking the compression springs out and putting them back in, maybe the orientation of the roller pin was wrong or something. I really don't know, but the shifter feels much, much better. Maybe it had to do with the fluid. Maybe it was, you know, I highly doubt like that little amount of fluid would cause this issue, but you know, I'm new to the Get Drag, so I don't know, but you know, it's resolved. So today I'm going to be putting my interior all back together, and then the final step for this car will be another alignment, like I said, and a very good detail, and that'll be it. And I should be taking it out today to enjoy it. So yeah, enjoy me putting the interior back together. Okay, so here's the slider kit. Inside bar, no tabs, because these have to mount flat to the vac mount. So here I have these 4 pieces of hardware. These are gonna connect the slider to the side mount. So the side mounts will sit like this. And then the seat will obviously sit here. And then I have hardware in the car that'll connect these holes to the vac mount. So what I'm gonna do right now is get the slider and side mount assembly. This hardware is for connecting the side mounts to the seat. So here's my seatbelt mounting solution. I took these old receptacles from my old Recaro setup. That's how I bought them. I'm not sure what these are. These are not E30 receptacles because Connor bought E30 receptacles for his and they're way longer. If anyone can tell me what these are, that'd be great, because I definitely want him to get a set of these. They're nice and short. The E30 ones, they stick up above the seat and they look really bad. So yeah, I'm mounting these to the VAC seatbelt receptacle mount. I put 2 washers under the slider here and it's not tight, it's just loose, but that's to accommodate. So when I mount this to the floor, this can sit even. So this slider sits on here and this slider sits on 2 washers. And the 2 washers are the equivalent width of the seatbelt mount. And I'm also doing this on this side too to not make it uneven.